Welcome back to the Daily Show, Room 123. What are you talking about today?
Today, we will be talking about the extraordinary adventures of Alfred Krop by Rick Yancey. I would like to start the discussion by first talking about the characters. So, in the new movie, The Extraordinary Adventures of Alfred Krop, is Alfred Krop the protagonist?
Yes, Alfred Krop is essentially a boy as an orphan that lives with his uncle. But his uncle doesn't care about him at all.
In the beginning of the story, Alfred starts out as a boy without a purpose. He feels like he is powerless and is continually told and shown by his remaining family that he has no worth. His mother dies of cancer right in front of him. He feels completely useless that he couldn't even save his own mother.
Another example of him being useless is when he couldn't stop his uncle from stealing the Excalibur, which led to his eventual death.
Alfred felt he was so useless about getting the sword and having his uncle killed that he set on a journey just to get it right. However, as the story progresses, he finds a purpose in facing his mistakes, handing over the Excalibur. Another main character in the story that has been shown is named Benascio.
He is a knight who was meant to keep the sword from the clutches of evil.
This character is shown little change throughout the story, and this happens when he travels with Alfred. Alfred made a change in Benaccio's heart to not caring about anybody other than the sword, his colleagues, and his daughter, to caring about Alfred and the human race. He's also very valiant and a brave warrior who is willing to sacrifice his life just to save someone.
This sums up all of the characters that had a huge impact on the story.
Now that we have discussed the characters, let's talk about the story.
But first, a commercial break from our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Cologne. He'll make you better. Look.
Don't buy it! It hurts! Stop it! Welcome back to the Daily Show of Room 123. We were talking about Alfred Krop last.
We were talking about the story. This story is a long one, and many people have said it isn't very interesting.
We agree, this movie does stretch on for a long period of time.
First, we learn of Alfred's mother's death when he was 12. At the time, he was powerless to stop cancer. After his mother's death, he is vaulted around foster homes until he lives with his uncle. He feels like he is worthless, and he is forced to play football. He is a failure, and his uncle tells him to help steal a sword. He steals it, and when they are escaping, they see an order of monks who try to stop them from taking the sword.
When they're escaping, a power courses through him and it allows him to take out the monks with the sword. When he finally escapes to his house, he gives the sword to Mogart, who had paid them originally to take the sword, and Mogart takes the sword and stabs his uncle, and the money that they're promised for taking the sword magically disappears.
He is visited by a man called Samson who tells him that the sword is the Excalibur, a legendary sword. When the other knights attack Mogart, all but one die. That one knight comes looking for Alfred. His name is Benascio. When he learns of their fate, he feels like he really screwed up. He feels that he must help Benascio. When servants of Mogart try to stop their quest, Benascio brutally murders them.
They travel to a fallen knight's mother's home, where Alfred learns of knight's mutilations. This is why Benascio was mutilating their opponents. They continue on their way to Nova Scotia, fighting thralls of Mogart and stealing cars.
Then they travel to Benaccio's house, where his daughter and her guardian live. Mike from Oipep explains how Mogart and Oipep are going to exchange the sword for money. Benaccio and Alfred travel to the extraction point, but they're wary of betrayal. Coming to the last subject, which is theme. What do you guys think the theme would be?
First of all, I think there are many themes in this book.
But what we believe is that there is one overarching theme to the book, which was Alfred Krop discovers that anything can be made up if you just put your mind to it. This theme is shown throughout the book that Alfred Krop is just a useless boy, and he wants to make up everything that he did wrong.
Another example is used when he steals a sword. He goes on a huge journey with just one of the knights protecting the sword to retrieve it back from Mogart, the antagonist. They had a large effect on him because he fully understood what he actually did by handling over the Excalibur, and he decided to set things right.
Another example is a quote straight from the book, partly responsible for this mess. And the only way he can make it up is by helping Benascio. Unquote. This quote gave him the sense that he had to do something about getting the sword back. This shows that he made his mind to save the sword from the clutches of Mogart.
This relates to the theme very much. Alfred felt a sense of obligations to right the wrongs that he had made when trying to accompany his uncle.
But what happened to them? I guess you're gonna have to watch the movie to find out.
Overall, this movie is very adventurous, and that is good.
However, the movie lacks in character depth and the only one main theme. A good story usually has multiple themes. In the story, the characters don't show realistic emotion about the death and other things. For example, when Alfred's uncle died, he showed little to no emotion, and later in the movie, his death had no impact on his decisions or his characters. Only Alfred developed over the course of the story, but he didn't develop or change to a satisfactory extent. We give it a 6 out of 10 stars.